Welcome to Women Don't Do That, where we empower you with inspiration, knowledge, and skills to redefine your boundaries and unleash your potential. I'm Stephanie Mitton, founder and CEO of Beacon North Strategies and your guide. Small town girl turned CEO while navigating career, motherhood, ADHD, and chronic migraines. Our conversations range from interviews with visionary women to solo episodes filled with actionable insights. We are your hub for turning what ifs into let's go. Are you ready to redefine your possible? Let's get started. Today, I am so honored to share that today's guest is Kathryn Marshall, a fearless advocate in employment and human rights law. She is the founder of Marshall Law. She's shaping policy, fighting high-profile cases, and empowering women in the workplace. We'll dive into entrepreneurship, being a leader, standing your ground, and what you need to know about your rights. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
Welcome, Kathryn.
Thanks for having me on.
It's great to have you here. I'm excited to unpack some of your story. I'd like to kick things off by asking people, what does life look like for you right now?
Life is definitely like drinking from a fire hose. That's how I describe it. Just, running a law firm and also having two young kids and a big practice and lots of high profile cases. But honestly, I love it. I love being very busy doing exciting things. But yeah, every day is a roller coaster for sure.
I can definitely identify with that experience. My kids are a little bit older than yours now. So mine are 14 and 11. And so in a bit of a different stage now, while also running a business. And it is a little bit easier for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot. And there's like working moms, like we get it. It's crazy. You have two different jobs and your
Yes.
your jobs never end.
Yeah, that's right. Can you share what motivates you to live your best life?
That's a really good question. I mean, I'm very motivated and driven by helping my clients. So I feel very fortunate that that is what motivates me. I'm not driven by money. I'm not driven by like accolades or awards or recognition. Like when I think of what makes me feel really good and what motivates me to like fight hard, it's definitely knowing that I'm really helping someone who's in a terrible situation.
Mm.
And I find it very fulfilling. And I think I'm very lucky to have found a job where like I'm doing what I think I'm meant to do.
I love that. Did you always know that you wanted to be a lawyer?
I always knew I wanted to be an advocate.
Mm.
When I think about myself, like I rarely think of myself as a lawyer. Like when I think of myself more as an advocate, and I've always been an advocate, even when I was a child. Like I was always like fighting different causes and standing up for people. And I've always had a big mouth and definitely not shy about sharing my opinions. My dad's a lawyer, he's now a judge, so law was always in the family for sure. But I always knew I wanted to like fight for people and stand up for people and um, law, that seemed like a good path to take. But I think I would have been just as happy like working with an advocacy group or just anything where I can advocate for people.
Hmm. I very much identify with that from being a lobbyist and advocate myself, and someone who also considered going to law school. So I can definitely see how those two things align really well. What drew you to employment law specifically?
Yeah, so that's an interesting story because I never really thought that employment law was an area of law you could specialize in law school. It was never something that was offered, even as a class, at least
Oh.
for me. And when I was a young lawyer, I did experience sexual harassment in my workplace.
Mm.
And I ended up having to go consult with a lawyer, an employment lawyer. And I remember this lawyer looked at me and she said, why don't you just come work for me? Why don't you're in a bad place? Why don't you just come work for me? And I was like, huh, that's a good idea. So that's honestly how I ended up in employment law. And I remember my first few cases, um, realizing like the impact I could make in
Mm.
people's lives because employment is that's a core part of everyone's life. I mean,
Yeah.
for a lot of people, it's like their values, it's their identity, it's their dignity, it's their integrity. And I think you probably identify too, Stephanie, like, if you love what you do, it's so much more than just a job.
Hmm.
So it is an area of law where you can make a big impact for people.
Mm. I love that story and how you found it because I think so many people, especially young women, think, their careers will be very kind of cookie cutter. And I love that you ended up doing something that you just was a circumstance and it's something you're so good at and that you really enjoy doing. That's such an amazing story. You recently started your own law firm, so congratulations. I
Yeah.
know that starting businesses is not super easy, and I'm sure a law firm is not easy either. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been an amazing journey. I had wanted to start a firm for years.
Okay.
Um, and I think it's just, what I tell everyone is start when you're ready. Like I had a
Mm,
lot of people saying to me for years, like, oh, you should just start your own firm. But I just didn't really feel ready. And then the second I just felt ready, that's when I put my plan into motion and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I was lucky to have just a lot of women in my network who had started their own businesses or had started law firms who I could get advice from. And like they were so generous with their time, like
mm,
people, giving me business plans and, helping me incorporate, not charging me for the incorporation fee. Like it was amazing to have like all
mhm.
that support, but it's scary, you're really every day waking up and you're fully relying only on yourself,
Yes.
but it's going well. And I love the business of law. And I realized like I'm very much an entrepreneur at heart. And I didn't know that about myself, but that's something I
Yeah.
learned.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think I would say the same thing. And now, never say never, but I can't ever imagine right now, like ever working for someone else ever again.
Oh, totally. And like, I mean, look, as an employment lawyer, I see the problems with working for other people every single day when my clients come to consult with me. But I always had a vision for a firm that would be fearless in its approach. Like we would take on like really important cases. We wouldn't shy away from fights and we would only fight for plaintiffs, for, people, not companies. And I realized I was never going to achieve that vision in someone
Mm,
else's business.
yeah. It's like
Also,
you
like,
have your own vision of what that looks like.
for sure. And like, it is scary. I think anytime you're like betting only on yourself, you're rolling that dice. But I had a lot of faith in my abilities and I have an amazing team and we're growing. We've done some more hiring, so we'll be announcing that soon. And
That's
there
so
is,
exciting.
like we've had a lot of on my on the first day I opened the firm, 30 referrals.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
awesome. So there's been a lot of support. And my husband's very supportive too, which is nice.
I loved when you launched it, it's called Martial Law. And just
Yeah.
like the way that you talked about it, your graphics that you chose, like it is bold. And I loved it so much because I had met you, I think, in an event. And I was like, oh, Kathryn, you should come on the podcast. And then when I saw that, I was like, okay, Kathryn needs to come on the podcast.
Yeah, so I mean, law is a very conservative industry.
Mhm.
There is not a lot of innovation that happens in our industry. It is a place where, like, you could take 30 different law firms and they all pretty much have the same website. And I knew that I wanted my branding to be really different. I wanted my website to look like the opposite of a law firm website. And actually, like when I was meeting with my designers, I said to them, like, I want my website to look like I'm running for Empress of the world. Okay. Like I want to like make it like a political website. I don't want to have any legalese on my website. Like I'm going to be wearing a hot pink blazer, which no one does. Like there's a stigma like, okay, if you're a woman, you have blonde hair, you better look really, serious. But I love clothes, I love colors, and I decided I would really lean into my authentic self. And I love my website. And, even with the things we're doing as a firm, we're just we're doing things differently.
Yes.
Like we're breaking the unspoken rules of how you should be as a lawyer in this country,
Mhm.
which is exciting.
Yeah, that's so exciting. It's honestly the exact same way I feel about my company, Beacon North Strategies, in a very similar environment. Old boys politics. And so I could definitely identify with all of that, and it's really exciting. Can you talk more about your areas of focus and what sets your firm apart from others?
Yeah, so I mean, the big thing that really sets us apart is we only act for plaintiffs. We only act for individuals, and most law firms in Canada, they do a mix, like they'll act for companies too. And I have a problem with that. I think if you're going to be a really fierce advocate for people and human rights, you can't try and straddle both sides of the fence. So we only act for people. Really, the specialty of the practice is employment law, human rights, discrimination cases, and civil sexual assault. And that's something I decided to do because there are not that many lawyers in Canada who specialize in those cases. They're really hard cases, but I really see a need for it, especially because our criminal system is so broken for victims, but
Mhm.
they still deserve justice. So I really look at how can I get people justice when they've been abused in a civil system, and that area of the practice is really expanding.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like it's really important work, especially if other people aren't doing it. So I really commend you for taking that on because it sounds like it's also not easy. Um, as you became an entrepreneur and took this on, what are some of the things that surprised you about moving into that role as an owner?
Definitely the experience of managing a team and
Mm,
realizing that like every day you have to show up as a leader.
right.
And I've worked in a lot of places where there wasn't leadership, where the people at the top were more focused on like keeping other people down. And I want to be a leader that my team looks up to, and that, I'm encouraging them and I'm helping them build their skills, um and that's really important to me. And I didn't realize actually how much time and effort it takes. Like you really have to show
Mhm.
up in that role every day. You can't
Yes.
just turn up at work and like shut your door and work on your cases.
Yes.
So that surprised me. Also, there is a lot of admin. I
Yes.
don't get admin. Um
Especially when you first start out at the very, very beginning. Initially, there's no admin, there's no HR, like there's nothing, right? Like you are everything. Then eventually you can subcontract or build it out, which is
For
awesome.
sure. And you get processes and systems, and the Law Society, they love administration. So just the administration of running a law practice is
Right.
quite heavy. But once you get the processes in place, that's fine. Uh, but honestly, the few cons to running a business, they're nothing compared with
Right.
the pros. And you probably like the fact that every single day I wake up and I'm like, I can do whatever I want to do. Like, I don't have to run this by anyone. And really, the sky is the limit. It's such an amazing feeling.
Yes. I love that too. And I love, you do have to be really intentional about it, but I love that if I really want to go to like my kid's school basketball game, I can just do it and I don't have to ask anybody.
Yeah, for sure. Like, you can go on vacation. You can, um, you can take on for me, like I can take on the cases that I want to take on, and I don't have
Mhm.
to worry about, upsetting a partner or a boss. And I can say what I want to say. I mean,
Yeah.
I always hated working at firms where like anytime there was like a day, you know, not, there was there'd always be like these annoying, like we recognize that this day is a, but they were always saying nothing. I always
Mm.
thought, like, okay, when I have a firm, when I talk, I'm gonna say something. And October
Mm.
7th came around, and we put out a statement, um, just recognizing all the women who'd been traumatized by rape and sexual violence. And I had so many lawyers and people reach out to me saying, thank you for posting that.
Mhm.
you're one of basically the only firms that did that. So,
Wow.
I love that I can use our voice and
Hmm.
not be hindered, by the internal politics that you get at bigger companies.
Right. You've worked on some really high profile cases that have had significant impact in Canadian law. Can you talk about some of those cases and the implications of them?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of people know me for my public interest litigation side of my practice, which is actually quite a small percentage of my practice. Like most of my cases, you're never going to hear about. They settle behind closed doors, but definitely my public interest cases are my favorite cases. I love them.
Yeah.
They're super fun. I love like a David versus Goliath battle. We've got a few really big ones right now. Probably one of my bigger ones is our case against the Trudeau Foundation,
Mm.
where we're representing an Indigenous survivor of sexual violence. And that you couldn't find a more David versus Goliath case. Um, we're fighting against a team of lawyers. And I think that case is really important for, how are we going to, for like looking at like, how do you practice in a trauma-informed way? Like, how do
Mhm.
you explain to the court, like, what is sexual violence and how do victims behave? And I think that's going to be a really impactful case. The other one, which has garnered a lot of attention, is our case against QP
Mhm.
and Fred Hahn, the union leader. We represent over 70 Jewish unionized members who are suing their union for discrimination
Mhm.
based on their, being Jewish. And people don't really take on unions.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I will. I can do it.
I love that. Yeah, because from what I remember, he made some very controversial comments about Hamas. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like in that case, Fred Hahn was spewing anti-Semitic hate on
Hmm.
social media and um, has continued to do that. And the union has enabled him and condoned him and supported him.
Mm.
And I was approached by a group of unionized workers led by Carrie Silverberg, my amazing client, she's the pointy end of that spear, and she's got this whole team of people behind her. But they came to me and they said they were sobbing. They're like, Kathryn, we feel
Mm.
sick that we have to pay dues to our union, and then they turn around and hurl abuse at us and discriminate and make us feel unsafe and
Hmm.
discriminate. What can we do? And I said, we will sue them. Let's take them to the human rights court and make them pay and make them do the right thing.
Mm.
And again, unions have a lot of power. They're not used to being
A lot
held
of
accountable.
money.
They have all the money, right?
Yeah.
But what they're doing is wrong. And there are a lot of lawyers who came up to me and they're like, oh, but are you sure that are you going to win? Like that's risky. And I would all of them, I say the same thing. Every fight is worth fighting. And this is definitely a fight that's worth fighting. And if you don't do something and you just sit back and you let these people do whatever they want and spew their hate, they're only going to keep doing it more and more and more.
And more people will
So
join in too, right? Like
absolutely. So
yeah.
someone has to stop them. And I'm happy for that person to be me and my amazing team of clients who are very brave to put their names on a lawsuit when they're still part of the union, right? Like they
Hmm.
could be retaliated against. But I don't mind taking on risky fights. Like I don't mind. I actually love them. I love taking on novel cases. I love uphill battles. Like a challenge. When you talk about what motivates me,
Yeah.
only challenges motivate me. Like if it's an
Right.
easy case,
Yeah.
I don't want it. I'm bored. That's
Yeah.
boring.
Yeah. Honestly, Catherine, I feel so much alignment with that. The fall courses of the Beacon North Mentorship Academy are here. Join us to boost your advocacy, communication, and media skills. Whether you're new to lobbying or a seasoned advocate, we've got something for everyone. Check out the schedule and secure your spot today. Link in bio for details. I don't know if you experience this, but I find as a woman who is comfortable with being bold and loud and stepping out of their comfort zone, not that many women do that. And sometimes for me, it feels not that is necessarily a bad thing, but it feels like a bit of a lonely space. What has your experience been like that?
That is such a good question because I deal with that every single day.
Mm,
And you look, I work in an industry and in a profession that's very male dominated, where I am immersed in conflict every day. And it's literally my job to fight people. Yet I still have male opposing counsel crying in my inbox about how mean I am and how rude I am and how I'm so aggressive. And I guarantee you they're not saying that to men.
yeah.
And I always call them out on it, by the way. I love it. I didn't do that when I was a younger lawyer and like kind of scared, but like now that I'm just like in my power, as I call it, I absolutely call it out because I want these men to learn and not to do it to, a junior lawyer. But I think like, I mean, you probably know this too, as a bold female, but women are socialized from a very early age to be appeasing,
Hmm.
to be nice, to not take up space.
Yeah.
So if you're a woman out there and you are being loud and you are sharing your opinions and you are unapologetic, um, that's very off-putting to some people.
Yeah, instead of being like, oh, she's just like the other men, it's always like you're too confident or you're too this or you're bitchy or you're whatever. You're intimidating.
Yeah. It
And it's
triggers it
yeah,
triggers that the insecurities.
yeah.
A lot of people like, okay, look, I've only dealt with it with men, okay, but there is a certain kind of man who I deal with a lot on the other side of a case who is very much as much as I'm basking in my power, he's living in his insecurities. And
Mm,
there's something about a powerful, loud woman who's also dressed feminine, very feminine. I love my, pretty clothes. I love my flower. I love my makeup. I like my hair, my blonde hair. But there's something about that it triggers some of these men to be very insecure
mm,
in themselves. And I always say to these guys, hey, it's not my job to make you feel good about yourself. I can
yeah,
give you a therapist number. I've got a lot of great therapists like
yeah.
on my Rolodex.
One of my favorite things to say more recently, especially when men gets angry, is to tell them to not be so emotional
Oh,
because they think that anger is not an emotion, right? Like they're like, oh, women are so emotional, blah blah. I'm like, you're being emotional right now. Like you are being emotional. So it's like it makes me so happy.
it's so funny. I had like a lawyer last week he sent me like a very angry email. Which and in his own mind, he probably thought he was being intimidating and like maybe that would have worked on like, a 25-year-old first year call, but I mean, I got the email and I did the thing that I always do in that situation because I'm not scared. I picked up the phone and I called this guy
Yeah.
and he
Mhm.
was not expecting it. He was like, "Hello?" Because I was calling from my cell phone, which has a different area code. And I'm like, hey, it's Kathryn Marshall. And there was just this pause. And then he immediately started spewing off. So, oh, but you're this, you're so rude. I just said, okay, first, calm down. This is what I tell my son. I got a 5-year-old son.
Yeah, yeah.
Calm down. And he just lost it. He hung up on me.
That's so funny.
And you know, um, I have experiences like that all the time.
Yeah.
Um, and I know so many women who do as well.
Hmm.
And I just think like we have to just keep being louder. The
Yeah.
only reaction to that is like keep taking up more space, be louder, be
Yeah.
more bold,
Then it
don't shy
becomes
away.
normalized.
Yeah.
Yeah, because everybody, whether, women should be able to stand up for themselves just like men do. What advice would you give to a woman who really struggles with that? Like, let's say saying no or boundaries or isn't like you and I, like how do they find that inner strength when they need to?
Well, I mean, definitely for me, it's something I learned over a very long period of time. So, I mean, I was not always this way, and I still struggle with boundaries. I still struggle with like people pleasing tendencies. And I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with, but especially women.
Hmm.
But I think just knowing that it's okay to say no,
Mm,
that you're not responsible for other people's emotional reactions to you.
yeah.
And like just the biggest advice I could give to any young woman, regardless of what her career is just be authentic. Don't be afraid to be who you are as a person.
Hmm.
When I started out in law, I was very concerned about like people looking at me and thinking like, oh, she has blonde hair and big boobs and she's a bimbo.
Yeah.
I was super insecure about that. I was insecure about people saying that I spoke like a valley girl. I remember some people would say that. And of course, there's a whole discipline of people who've studied how women get criticized for our voices. This
Right.
is not men have to deal with.
Right.
I was insecure about the fact that I was a young mother and that
Mm,
I thought that, would people not give me opportunities because they thought I would be going on mat leave. And I felt like I hid who I was in many ways, or I like sort of let my shine dimmer a little bit.
hmm.
And the moment that I stopped doing that is really when my career really took off.
Wow. Yeah. Owning who you are and just,
Yeah,
yeah.
and like being like, I was also told like, okay, as a lawyer, like you can't be empathetic, you can't cry with your clients, you can't show emotion. And I'm just not like that. I'm a very emotional person. I'm very passionate. And I get very personally invested in cases. And I started showing that emotion. And people like clients really loved it. Clients
Right.
really,
People like
people
to be seen, right? Like they want to, and they're
absolutely.
go like the cases that you're taking on are really hard. When you talk about, people's opinions of you, it kind of makes me laugh, Catherine. You won't probably know this about me, but I'm only 4'10", like I'm very short. And so it's
Oh,
so
okay.
funny because when I meet people online, I'm advising people doing government meetings or
Yeah.
whatever, and then I'll meet them in person and they're like, "Oh my God, you have like, I don't know, a nicer term, but like big dick energy," and you're like this
Yeah.
this little
Yeah.
lady.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Um,
I know I wouldn't have
yeah.
guessed it because
Yeah.
you've got like a big personality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
No,
I'm
I'm
very tall,
really
like
little.
I'm 5'11",
Yes,
so
yes. I remember now
um
when I met you. Yeah, you tower over me.
that height helps. Like I mean, I have to tell you, like the number of times I've walked into like a mediation room or a courtroom or a boardroom, and like there's these men sitting there who have been sending me little pissy emails, and like they realize I'm like 5 inches taller than them because of course I always wear heels too. And they're just like, oh wow, I do enjoy that aspect of things, but um like going back to kind of empathy and like being
Right.
seen, I think, everyone, like women are very good at that. Women are great at being emotionally in touch. And it's unfortunate that like for so long we were told to kill that part of our personalities in like the corporate world.
Yeah.
You see women now really like, wow, they're using it and they're leaning into it and like they're being so successful with it. And you will never hear me say to a client, stop being so emotional. I'm not your therapist. Don't tell me these things. No,
Yeah.
of course, no. I'm like, tell me all the things. I see you and I
Hmm.
know I'm here to validate how you feel because I know it's really hard.
Hmm. I love that because it's owning who you are as a leader, being who you are as a leader, and then allowing other women around you and coming up behind you to feel like they can too. And I think that's really important. Um, I wanted to ask you, when you look at employment law, rights in the workplace, like what do you wish more women knew?
I definitely wish more women knew that if you're in a situation at work where you're being like demoted, whether, maybe you're being sidelined or like you've come back from mat leave and they've taken half your job away, that you have options. You don't have to just quit and walk away. you can assert constructive dismissal, and that does involve a strategy, and like you should go talk to a lawyer. I mean, preferably me. I call myself the queen of constructive dismissals, but talk to someone.
Yeah.
You do have options. You don't have to just put up with being treated terribly, and you
Yes.
don't have to just quit and walk away from your career. There's things that can be done. So I do wish people knew that. A lot of people don't. I get it. It's scary, being, and when you've been gaslit and you've been mistreated and you've been talked down to, your confidence is going to be so eroded that you're to fight back when you're at your lowest. It's so hard, but that's all my clients.
Yes.
They're having to fight back when they're at their lowest. And wow, that takes a lot of perseverance.
Yeah, I think it's really important what you shared. I know when I look back to early in my career, especially in lobbying, I worked at some pretty difficult places and things that were said to me that is not okay or would constitute sexual harassment at other places. And I always just kind of like quit. And
Yeah.
right? Or just different things. I remember, I mean, I know you know a lot about this, but like some of the different things that happened working in politics or on Parliament Hill. And I remember one time stuff came out about one of the MPs, and I thought to myself, I said, I it was the first time that I recognized as like, I know that this is true because I remember him like kissing me on the cheek and different things like that at like professional receptions and different things like that, where I was like, that person's probably telling the truth because I know what my experience was like and I never told anybody. And I never thought about that it was actually really that bad until, 10 years later when it's in the news and you go, oh, yeah, that was a problem.
Totally. And politics, like your industry that you're in, is really toxic when it comes to just work, the culture of the workplace. And I know so many women in politics and lobbying who have like terrible stories. But that's why the Me Too movement was so successful. It's because every woman was like, literally was like, me too. And that's how we know that other women are not lying, because we
Yeah.
have all experienced the same things.
Yeah.
I don't know a single woman in the profession in the corporate world who has not experienced sexual harassment or discrimination or encountered like terrible comments. I mean, I could write a whole book on this shit that I've had to deal with. Maybe I will, by the way, but that's another.
You can come back and talk about it.
Yeah. But I think we all know, like, that was the Me Too movement, because we were all, every woman's like, well, that happened to me too. And
Right.
I always say to people, like, there's no good reason for any woman to make up or lie about being
Yeah.
just,
It's hard enough to come forward and tell someone, right? Like,
exactly.
do you recommend people try to address it with other managers and stuff first, or are you just like, that's never helpful? Like their interest is just the company, like go see somebody like you directly?
If you're experiencing like sexual harassment at work or discrimination, I think the first place to start with is talk to a lawyer. It's worth paying like whatever the consultation fee is to just talk to the lawyer to get strategic advice. Often the advice I give to women in those situations, and men too, like I have a lot of male clients. I want to be clear, like men experience misconduct in the workplace too, especially the military and banking. But anyways, and politics. But what I usually tell clients is, if you're experiencing misconduct in some way, you do want to paper it. You need to report it to HR. Even though HR is probably not going to do anything, you need to report it so that later on, when we are going to do something about it, we can show that you tried. And it's really important to document. And a lot of people are scared to do that. Like I get a lot of cases where like women are like, oh, everything's been over the phone and I haven't put anything in writing. And it's scary. I know putting things in writing is, because you know why it's scary? It makes it really real. It's like shit just got real.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you've ever had to write notes like that, I know from personal experience, and you go back and look at them like years later, months later, you'll be like, oh my goodness, like that was really bad. Like, so it's
100%.
like anything like that. Yeah, it's very hard, but it is really good to write it down.
It's important to write it down. So because a big part of these cases is like when I take the case on, like I want to be able to say to the company, well, my client, blew the whistle on it, or she tried to do something about it. You guys fucked up. You didn't do anything. So
Right.
now you're complicit. And it makes the case stronger. But look, there are some situations where like the companies do the right thing. I
Right.
will say it's very few and far between, but I have seen them.
Right. Well,
So,
I
but I
like
think
that
it's important
idea
to
of
price
booking
first.
a consultation like you suggested, right? Because it's like then they can at least make an informed decision. Maybe they continue the case, maybe they don't, but at least it gives them a starting point to get the information
Yeah, know your
to decide what to
options. Don't
do.
exactly like look, a lot of people don't go to lawyers until shit has really hit the fan. I actually think going to a lawyer as early as you can in the process is really good, just to talk it through, get some strategic advice, know what your options are, know what your rights are.
Yeah.
Maybe there's like corporate policies that could be looked at. Like there's so many different things, and it is
Yeah.
worth like your career is important. It's your life. It's worth that at least that meeting. But going to a lawyer too is intimidating. I think a
Mhm.
lot of people again, it just seems so real. That's why like I do videos and I try and make the experience of coming and consulting with me very low key,
Right.
very personable. I don't want it to be scary or intimidating.
Hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And just, walking us through some of your advice and your experience. We are running out of time, so we should probably jump in on the rapid fire questions. Can you share a rule you've broke that turned out to be a great decision?
Um, don't wear pink.
Love it. Who's a woman who continually inspires you?
That's a good one. Taylor Swift.
Oh, nice. What's one book that has significantly impacted your wisdom or perspective?
Um, Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings.
Hey, Kathryn, I think you're
And
the
I have a
first
quote by
guest
her
to
right
say
behind me.
that. Okay. Oh, good. I'll have to look at it. It's not very
Just
often somebody says a book. I'm like, I have not heard that one yet. Amazing.
it's an amazing book. It changed my outlook on so many things. But I also just love I love her poetry, and she's got this I have it right behind me, but like she's talks about the importance of like fighting through terrible times.
Mm.
There's a lot of her books and her poetry, and it inspires me, but I also, well, I'll often send it to my clients and be like, I really need you to read this.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, it sounds like you're very special, Kathryn Marshall, in the work that you're doing. You're doing some really important work for women in Canada and setting a great example for the rest of us. So thank you for everything that you do and for taking the time to be here today.
Well, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. This was very fun.
Thank
This is
you.
like now I'm going to go fight all day with annoying lawyers, but this was a nice way to start my day of calls.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us on Women Don't Do That. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating or review. Connect with us on Instagram at WOMENdontDOthat and visit our website www.WOMENdontDOthat.com for more details. Join our Patreon to support our work. Find all of the links in the show notes. Remember, you have the power to transform your what ifs into let's go. Together, let's redefine your possible. Until next time. The opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Women Don't Do That, Stephanie Mitton, or affiliated brands.